Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:06 here, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Tonight, Kamala Harris set to make her closing argument among her people in Washington, D.C., holding a rally this evening, just like the KKK did back in 1925. Echoes of Darkness today in Washington, D.C. For more on this horrible news, let's bring in the founder of the Tucker Carlson Network now, Tucker Carlson. Hello, Tucker. Good to have you with us, sir. Can we hear Tucker? Is he there? There he is.
I'm right here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you now, Tucker. Hello.
That was chilling what you just said. And it does echo darkness and Birth of a Nation and just a darker time. And I'm not going to stand by and let Kamala Harris take us back to a time when people marched with hoods down the street in Washington, D.C.
Just to pick that venue, it really tells you the dog whistles are not dog whistles anymore. They're practically screaming about their bigotry.
Well, yeah. And I mean, it wasn't that long ago that Confederate troops bombarded that city, racist Confederate troops, and she's in that city.
Oh.
So yeah, it's something to think about. I think
it's definitely something to think about. Well, something I've been thinking about, Tucker, and I'm really grateful that you're on with us today. Thank you for that. I've known you for a very long time, and I've also known you as someone who has basically rejected getting involved in endorsing candidates or even being on the campaign trail on behalf of a candidate or participating in a political rally. You've covered them for your career, but suddenly now you are out there on the campaign trail standing alongside President Trump. What changed for you?
Well, I never thought I'd do it, that's for sure. And I'm sure I'll offend everyone by admitting I've been a very inconsistent voter over the years. I don't like voting. I've never liked voting because I know the candidates. And it's too weird to have voted for someone and then see the person or cover the person. So I try to avoid voting. I just voted for Trump, absentee. I felt great about it. I never thought I would speak at a political rally. I've spoken at a couple. I'm having one on Thursday for Trump in Arizona. And what drove me to it, or at least what changed my mind, I guess, would be everything that's happened in the past 6 months, where it's become completely clear that Kamala Harris is just a stand-in, as Joe Biden was. That it's the man against the machine. It's not a question of is Kamala Harris qualified to be president? Of course not. But lots of people aren't qualified to be president, run for president. The realization that scared the hell out of me and put me at a Trump rally as a speaker is the fact that it has nothing to do with the individual. The Democratic Party doesn't care about the individual, doesn't care who's running for president, whoever works, because the collective is more important than the person. And that attitude is totalitarian. That's the attitude that got millions of people killed in the last century. The fact that it's here that we have a political party, which in some ways is the dominant party. It's the party with all the money, all the positions of power, all the levers. The fact that they have that attitude where they just don't care who the candidate is, as long as it's someone who will repeat the party line. I mean, I don't want that in my country, because that's the end of America, as far as I'm concerned. That's the end of, the recognition of civil liberties, of human rights that make this country unique. So it's really terrifying to me, and I'm happy to be out there fighting it.
Yeah, in other words, you're endorsing your own liberty, which makes a lot of sense. So when it comes to President Trump, July 13th is a huge date, obviously, because that's the date that he was shot in the head and stood up, survived it, and pumped his fist to the crowd to fight. That was the day that Elon Musk announced that he's decided to officially support President Trump as a result of everything that he's seen transpire in this country, but particularly that moment. Was that in any way, Tucker, a catalyst for what brought you to this moment, to the way you view Trump?
Well, yeah. I mean, I spoke at the Republican convention after that. Something I've been to, every Republican convention since '92. I never imagined I would speak at one, but I realized watching Trump, and I think I said this or meant to, that bravery is the indispensable quality in a leader. The bravest man is the leader by definition. And we're led by cowards. And on the Democratic side, they won't even name themselves. They won't even tell you who's in charge. Is it, Ron Klain or Susan Rice or some other faceless creep who's making the decision to say allow the country to be invaded. I mean, you don't even know. They're not brave enough to say their own names. They hide. And watching Trump stand up, having been shot in the face, as the Secret Service is trying to shield him and raise his fists in the air in defiance, I just thought that was such a remarkable moment. I've never seen anything like that. You couldn't script that. That was not planned. In fact, it was so unbelievable that Democrats accused Trump of making it up, of putting stuntman blood in his ear or something. I mean, they're insane. But it was an authentic glimpse of the man within, and that's a brave man, a truly brave man.
So what do you make of the left's rhetoric that leads to attacks like this? I know the left has loved saying things like, "Oh, that's a dangerous thing to say." This is what they've been doing for years. But I looked back at what Teddy Roosevelt said right after he was shot early in the last century, and he said from the moment he was shot, still with a bullet inside of him, he was talking about how the outrageous lies that were being told would obviously inflame weak-minded people to take an action like that. And that struck me as true, that you do have responsibility for the way you speak. And here we have Democrats accusing Trump of being Hitler, his supporters of being like Nazis, the fact that he did an event at the same place the Knicks play and the Rangers. Oh, that's just like the Nazis in the 1930s. It's reached ludicrous levels, and I'm concerned that there will be another attempt on his life as a result of it.
Well, there have been, by the way. There have been. And there's a lot going on, I would say, behind the scenes. That's my sense. And not my sense. I know that to be true. And so,
I'm sorry. What do you mean? There's a lot. I'm sorry. On what issue? There's a lot going on behind the scenes to protect Trump.
I'm saying I think Trump's life is being threatened on a regular basis in significant ways.
Got it.
I mean, I know that. So there's that, and it shouldn't surprise anyone. And no, it's not Iran. The threat is from the United States. The same people who wrecked your country are the same people who are trying to kill Trump, and the same people who are trying to kill our system and pack the Supreme Court and eliminate freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of religion and the basis of America. They're, at this point, like whining about the left is just pointless. If you can't recognize the pattern of behavior this far in, 9 years in, or, 4 years since Memorial Day 2020 and the George Floyd revolution, these people are not at all like us. They're intent on ending the freedoms that make this America, starting with the freedom of speech. I mean, they're open about it. They're working on it full time. I got, contacted by the New York Times yesterday, who's made it its business to shut down my right to say what I think. That's the program. It's really simple. So, I know all of us are kind of shocked that this is really happening, but now is the time to acknowledge that it is happening. Their intent is ill intent. They don't care if you die. They've watched, for 10 years now, 100,000 Americans have died every year of drug ODs, and they open the border to the drug cartels. So they don't care about Americans dying. Life expectancy has gone down consistently for rural whites. They don't care. They hate rural whites because they support Trump. So that's who they are. And at some point, you have to stop being surprised, just acknowledge it and do whatever you can to stop them from having power, because they are a threat to your life and the lives of your children. That's not an overstatement.
On the election interference front, I just want to give people more of a sense of what you're talking about with the New York Times. The New York Times and Media Matters have joined forces in an attempt to scare advertisers away from conservatives. In other words, to take away the revenue and the means by which they can broadcast anything to the public. And that includes efforts to go after you, to go after Ben Shapiro. I saw Benny Johnson. I saw Mike Davis. The list goes on and on. The same New York Times reporter working in collaboration with Media Matters to tear all of you down. What does that tell you? And is this just the latest manifestation of election interference?
It tells you that they're totalitarian. There's no limit to what they'll do. They allowed Trump to get shot in the face. They allowed that. The Secret Service under Joe Biden, controlled by Joe Biden, allowed that. In fact, whether intentionally or not, it's immaterial. If you leave your 2-year-old in a hot car and go to the casino for 3 hours and he dies, does it matter whether you meant to kill him or not? No, you killed him. You allowed that to happen.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what they did with Trump. And so at this point, again, it's important just to face reality. If it's raining outside, at some point you have to say, well, it's raining, and I'll take steps. I'll wear a raincoat or whatever. This is a totalitarian movement. It's a religious movement, which is to say it has no limits at all. It's in the United States. I've spent, 9 years trying to deny to myself that it is what it looks like, that it's totalitarian. I've I wanted to live in the country I grew up in where Democrats were just misguided, or I just disagreed with them. Maybe I was misguided. I don't know. Who knows?
Right,
We
right.
disagreed. That's the world I've always lived in. Now it's very obvious, they've convinced me through their actions, that they have no interest in debating me. It's not about disagreement. It's about destroying anyone who gets in your way. And they're approaching this with religious fervor. Religious fervor sufficient for them to believe things that are insane, like men can become women, or open borders are good, or whatever. Name the lie, but they really believe those lies. And so they're dangerous. And so I'm going to do whatever I can to prevent them from continuing to hold power. And by the way, if they on next Wednesday, a week from tomorrow, stand up and say Kamala Harris has a historic victory, is the first whatever they're claiming she is today, and she won 85 million votes, I'm going to say I will accept that result only when you prove it's true. And when you prove it, I'll accept it because I believe in reality. And if you won fair and square, you're my president, and I'll keep you in my prayers. Mm-hmm. But I'm not going to take that at face value. And just because Jeff Goldberg screams it at me from the pages of The Atlantic or Morning Joe, Mika cries because I'm an election denier, that's not good enough. We've been through that before. I'm sick of being bullied. If you can prove that you won it fair and square, I will salute you as president. And if you can't, I won't. And I think I share that view with a lot of people. That's not a call to violence. It's a call to defend the system that we have, which is a good and honorable system that they are attempting to destroy. So that's my position.
Also, how many Democrats are promising to accept the result of the election if Trump is declared the victor next week?
Well, of course, whatever they're claiming that you're doing is what they're doing themselves. Trump is going to use the military to hurt his opponents. Well, the Biden administration just changed the regulation to allow the U.S. military to murder American citizens on American soil. It was a Democratic president, Barack Obama, who murdered an American citizen with a drone without even charging him with a crime, much less adjudicating it or trying him. Just killed him, murdered him, and was never held to account. Obama is on his way to becoming a billionaire. So it's like they worship violence, they worship abortion and euthanasia and war. And it's not a stretch to imagine that they're willing to employ violence here. They just changed the regs at DOD to allow that. And it's so horrifying that people are pretending it's not happening, but it is happening. And I'm just saying, that's not the system I grew up in. It's not the country that I inherited by birth. And I'm personally just not going to accept that. I want to live in the country I grew up in, which was fundamentally moderate as a two-party system, not a one-party system, that respected everybody's right to speak and to assemble,
yes,
right, and to defend himself. I mean, that's America. They're the radicals. You're not going to meet anyone more moderate than me, except maybe Donald Trump, who's utterly moderate just by his temperament. He's so moderate that he hires people who hate him because his instinct is to get along with other people. He's the opposite of the extremist. And by the way, I can just say, for whatever it's worth, I'm the same. I don't like change. These are the people who are trying to change this country irreparably and for all time. So my resistance to that is not radical at all. It's moderate. I like the status quo of, say, 1999.
Yes.
Let's go there.
Well, and obviously it's moderate because you're not doing something radical in order to change it. You're appealing to voters to support Trump. So you are holding on to some optimism about the state of this election. In fact, you've gone so far as to say this past weekend, you said out loud, you said Trump's going to win. You said at Madison Square Garden, you declared it. Now, I realize the peril in political projections. You've talked about it for years. I hate making predictions. I'm always wrong. I don't know. How did you arrive at the conclusion that Trump is going to win next week?
Well, I mean, he's, up in the private polling in all 7 battleground states. Kamala Harris is having, rallies in Washington, D.C. That tells you everything. But that's not why I said that. I said it because the people who are supporting Trump are not the people who supported him in 2020 or 2016. If you have, upper middle class white college girls supporting Donald Trump, and they are, then you have a profound vibe shift. These are exactly the same people who put black squares in their Instagram 4 years ago because they were told to support Black Lives Matter. And so I'm not attacking anybody. I'm just noting what everybody knows is true, which is certain classes of people are bellwether classes. Like they know which way the wind is blowing. And all of a sudden, it is no longer embarrassing in the most status conscious class of all, which is affluent college girls, to support Donald Trump. And that tells you that something really deep has happened, has changed. It's no longer uncool. He's cool, and she is not cool. And that's like distinct from all the sort of substantial arguments you could make, for him and against her, or appeals to the quote data, which is mostly nonsense anyway. But no, it's just obvious. I was in Manhattan 2 days ago, and like all of Midtown is clogged with people from all backgrounds wearing MAGA hats in Midtown Manhattan. Really? When was that? When was the last time you saw that? Never. Things have changed.
Yeah, they have. So as goes sororities, so goes the country. Is that the takeaway?
The takeaway is when you see 22-year-old blonde girls all wearing exactly the same jeans, and this has been true my whole life. It'll be true forever.
Yeah.
The most kind of status-aware people in your society hear the dog whistle before everyone else. They do. That's just. I'm not attacking anyone. I'm just saying that's true. And they all wear the same jeans. They all have the same haircut. They all watch the same Netflix show. They're all subscribed to the same Instagram channels, and they're all wearing MAGA hats. This country is changing fast.
Yeah, it sure is. Well, you're good at assessing it. Tucker Carlson, the founder of the very successful Tucker Carlson Network. Really nice to talk to you, and have fun next week as the election barrels forward. Thank you, sir.
You're the best, Vince. Thanks.
Thanks, Tucker. What kind of election interference is the left coming up with? We're going to talk about it as we dive into all the ways that the big tech companies are wielding their power as we speak to sell an unsellable product, Kamala Harris, and to suffocate the one that people want, Donald Trump. It's all ahead. Stay with us, and you can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Hey, good afternoon to you. It's 5:35 here on News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Coming up, we'll talk about some of the media's election interference, in particular the big tech companies, how they're trying to suppress natural conversation and replace it with the artificial stuff. They got to get Kamala across the finish line. By hook or by crook. Before we get there, I want to take Ed, who's calling in from Springfield. Ed is on line 1 and has been waiting very patiently to join us. Hello, Ed. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm doing good, Ed. Thanks for calling in. What's on your mind?
Well, I just want to make sure that people realize how important the Senate and Congress races are, because, even if President Trump does win, if we lose the House and the Senate, they're going to impeach him, put him in jail, and even if they don't do that, they're not going to approve any of his appointments. They're not going to let him do anything.
Yeah, Jamie Raskin says they want to stop him on January 6th from becoming president. So that's all the reason you need, which is don't let Democrats control the House.
Yeah, so the House and the Senate, and especially, I never used to think about it, sending money to Senate races in other states, but, Dems do it all the time. There's no reason we can't pick the 1 or 2 or 3 tightest races and donate there, because we can flip, we only need to flip 2 seats and hold on. I know Ted Cruz is a pretty tight fight down there, so you might want to send some money to Ted Cruz if you're trying to save the democracy. Also Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, those 3 races are really close. Pennsylvania is fairly close, but I think Ohio, Wisconsin, and Michigan, in terms of the Senate races, we're either up ahead by like less than 1% or we're right there, So those 3, your money will make a big difference if you send it to like Ohio, Texas, or Michigan for what Michigan is Mike Rogers, I think. Wisconsin, Hovde or whatever. I don't even
Eric Hovde, yeah.
Eric Hovde. And then Bernie Moreno in Ohio, So, let's send some money to those guys, because that could be the difference between a Republican or Democrat Senate.
Yeah, you're totally right. I mean, this is absolutely critical. The other piece is here close to home in Virginia is Hung Cao's candidacy. This is really obviously Virginia is the one where everybody thinks the conventional wisdom that it's not going to go to Trump, it's not going to go to Hung. But should Trump prevail in that race, if Trump prevails in Virginia, there's a high likeliness that Hung Cao prevails in Virginia. And then you and I are having a very different conversation, Ed. And they'll be campaigning together on Saturday in Salem, Virginia. They'll be sharing that stage as they make that final push ahead of Election Day. So these local races matter. And also the ones that are very, very obviously in spitting distance. are some of these congressional races in Virginia that could very much decide the control of the entire United States House of Representatives. So we can't give these down ballot races short shrift. They mean so much.
Yeah, but I voted already. I voted for Hunk Cal. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
And, I donated to his campaign. But also, that's I wouldn't say it's a long shot, but there are races that we have a much better chance of flipping, and they're right on the hairy razor's edge. And a couple of bucks one way or the other might make a difference there. So, definitely go out and support Hunk Cal.
Yeah.
But consider those races in Ohio, Michigan, and Wisconsin, because we really have a very, very good chance those could turn red. So
it's a big deal.
I would say, look at those. Look where you're putting your money, where it's going to have the most impact. And so I think that's that.
Ed,
also, even for those people out there who might be undecided, or maybe they don't want to vote for Trump or Harris, go vote down ballot. Go vote for Hunk Cal and Van Meter or whoever else you got on the ticket there. So don't forget the down ticket stuff. That's important, and donate.
That's all smart guidance. And also get over yourself and vote for Trump. That's the other piece. Ed, thank you.
Yeah, obviously. Okay.
Ed, I really appreciate the call. It's Ed in Springfield making a.
Okay, and I thank you for what you do, man.
Thank you very much. Making a lot of sense, Ed, today. Yeah, and let's be honest about what's happening in Virginia this weekend. President Trump doesn't show up for the final weekend of the election in Virginia unless his internals are showing that this is a real race. That's it. And that means very good things for Hunk Cal, too. So we'll see. We'll see what happens in the Commonwealth. Pulling for you, gentlemen. Okay. Let me kind of get back at to some of the censorship efforts that are underway. You heard me talk with Tucker Carlson earlier this hour. And if you didn't, please check out the podcast, The Vince Coglianese Show, and you can get all of our interviews there. And really appreciate that. But he was emphasizing that he's been receiving text messages from a New York Times reporter. And he's not alone. A number of conservative information sharers are all receiving these texts or emails from a New York Times reporter who's out to destroy them. That is the goal, and their livelihoods. The guy's name is Nico Grant. He's a reporter for the New York Times, and this is what he sent to Tucker yesterday. Tucker posted all of this to X. You can see the screen grab. And he said, "Good day, Mr. Carlson." He starts with a lie. He doesn't want to. He says, "I hope you're well." That's a lie. "I'm Nico Grant, a reporter at the New York Times. I wanted to give you an opportunity." Oh, that's nice. "To comment for an upcoming article that takes a look at how political commentators have discussed the upcoming election on YouTube. We rely on an analysis conducted by researchers at Media Matters for America." You can see where this is going immediately. "Could you kindly provide us with a comment or decline to comment by end of day tomorrow, Tuesday, October 29th? Thank you so much for your time," he says passive-aggressively. "Here are the points that we plan to include. 1. Media Matters identified 286 YouTube videos between May and August that contained election misinformation, including narratives that have been debunked or are not supported with credible evidence. 2. Researchers identified videos posted by you in those 4 months that contain election misinformation," the Times says. Listen to how how credulous they are towards Media Matters. Oh, Media Matters said it. Oh, well, it must be true. It must be true. The guy goes on. "Number 3, we feature a clip of you saying, quote, all the sadness we've seen after the clearly stolen election. All these bad things happen, but people I know love each other more," end quote. I also have a few questions. 1, are you a member of the YouTube Partner Program? The New York Times reporter says to Tucker. In other words, are you generating revenue from your videos? Are you making money? 2, if so, how frequently does YouTube demonetize your videos? Are they keeping you from making money very often? They should be, is the implication of the question. And 3, has YouTube sent you messages, emails, or notices in the last year that your content contains misinformation? Thanks for your time. That's the note. Tucker's response. "So the New York Times is working with a left-wing hate group to silence critics of the Democratic Party? Please ask yourself why you're participating in it. This is why you got into journalism? It's shameful. I hope you're filled with guilt and self-loathing for sending me a text like this. Please quote me." Nico Grant, New York Times reporter. "Thank you for your prompt response. Would you like to address any of the points or questions above?" Tucker, would I like to participate in your attempt to censor me? No thanks. But I do hope you'll quote what I wrote above. And also, note that I told you to F off, which I am now doing. Thanks. Which I am now doing is one of the all-time the all-time closers, which I am now doing. So that's, I think, how that conversation ended. That's the part that Tucker shared with everybody. And he's not alone. Mike Davis from the Article 3 Project also got one of these. Benny Johnson, you know Benny Johnson, the conservative social media podcaster. He received one of these from the New York Times. Ben Shapiro, that's our colleague right here on WMAL. Ben Shapiro received one of these from the New York Times, accusing him, just blanket accusations of you're trafficking in misinformation. You're lying. Notice the New York Times reporter didn't bother to tell Tucker what his lies were. What were the lies? What were the lies? Where's your fact check that I was wrong? And so this is, while often unseen, a very standard practice on the left, which is they try and kick the legs out from under the right as often as possible. For years, there was a CNN guy, Oliver Darcy, who dedicated his life to this. He would contact advertisers for places like Fox News. Like, did you know your ad is running next to hate content? And this is not a real journalistic inquiry. This is not an effort to find out something and then share it with the public. It wasn't an effort to enrich the public's understanding of their involvement in the civic debate. No, nothing like that. This was an effort to get Fox News' revenues to go down. That's all it was. Under the guise of calling themselves reporters, they are in fact hatchet men for the left's causes, which is to destroy their political opponents. So the New York Times is an obedient little handmaiden of the worst elements of the left. If Media Matters is collaborating with you on a hit job, you're not doing journalism. That's not what's happening here. And so all of these conservatives today are being attacked, and the goal is this. What's going to happen is then they're going to write a piece. Look at what Google is doing. Google is funding misinformation and lies. So this is kind of the way that they pressure their ideological allies to obey. Hey, Google, don't you dare let advertisers appear on that content. Don't you dare become a part of the chain of custody of that money going to these evil conservatives who are lying to you all the time. This is the way the New York Times was to present it. To hurt them, to take them off the playing field, to not debate their ideas, but instead diminish their ability to project them at all. That's the game. So the New York Times is doing that. Additionally, in the last 24 hours, perhaps you noticed that President Trump did an interview with Joe Rogan last week. Now, Joe Rogan is at any given moment perhaps the biggest podcast on the planet. That can change from week to week, but by and large, he's one of the most listened to podcasts in the country. And these are 3-hour affairs usually. He sits down. And I have friends who are older friends who say to me, "Who would listen to a thing for 3 hours?" I'm like, people, they listen in parts. I listened to the whole Trump Rogan thing in parts. I checked in on it every so often. I finally finished it. I think this morning in its totality. It was great. But he goes 3 hours with Trump. You know what happened yesterday? Google somehow made it impossible to find it just by searching Donald Trump, Joe Rogan on YouTube. Now, if you search those terms, the most obvious thing that any reasonable search engine would produce would be that podcast. Not least of all because it is upwards of, almost 40 million views now? It's one of the most viewed podcasts, viewed videos in such a short time frame that anybody's ever created on the internet. And yesterday, if you typed in Donald Trump, Joe Rogan, no dice. I tried it myself. No luck yesterday. Now, today, it's been apparently flipped back. And this is par for the course with Google. I can tell you it was a couple years ago, I think it was at the Daily Caller, we noticed that Google was running a fact check widget on the side, meaning like a little feature on the side of its search results where they would have all these fact checks delivered whenever you were searching conservative websites. But if you search for left-wing websites, no fact check widget was up. There was no effort to try and throw the brakes up spike strips to stop you from getting to that content. Whoa, 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 be careful. You're about to engage in some misinformation. And at the time, if my memory serves correctly, Google said something to the effect of, our algorithm, sorry. It was just a mistake. It wasn't intentional, which is how often have you heard that? I'm like, why do all these mistakes go in the same direction? So here's the New York Post headline today. YouTube, Google accused of censorship as Joe Rogan's Trump interview nearly impossible to find and search. Quote, no sensible explanation. Podcaster Joe Rogan's highly watched interview with former President Trump has racked up more than 35 million views, but fans searching for it on YouTube may have a hard time finding it, leading to accusations of censorship against the Google-owned site. They say Joe Rogan Trump or Joe Rogan Donald Trump, those are the search terms, didn't bring up Friday's 3-hour sit-down. The Spotify interview also was notably absent from YouTube's trending page on Monday. Instead, users were offered results of videos from traditional media outlets like The Hill, MSNBC, and Fox News, and their coverage of the interview. An unrelated clip from Saturday Night Live even topped the results ahead of Rogan's interview. The difficulty in finding the video has led many Trump fans to accuse Google of censorship ahead of next week's election. Elon Musk responded to all of this, saying it was, quote, unreal. Quote, unreal. YouTube said in a statement in a post on X, quote, for some searches on Monday, the original 3-hour interview didn't appear prominently. Short excerpts uploaded by the Joe Rogan channel appeared, but we know it was frustrating for users looking to find the full video. We've worked to resolve this, and viewers will begin to see the full podcast in more YouTube search results soon. Oh, good. So in the most critical window of time, which is immediately after the interview's been conducted and everybody's talking about it, it's impossible to find it. But give it another day, maybe it'll be back in the search engine. Huh, weird. Now, what do you think? Innocent mistake or election interference? I'll let you decide. Then there's a place called Reddit. You familiar with Reddit? Reddit's a useful place. I like Reddit, actually. Usually, when you try and search for something on a search engine, this is a real hack for you. You can use for anything in your life. When I try like my purchasing decisions, like reviews of various programs, that kind of thing, I hate Google for those because it's mostly garbage. There's people who have like literally will create search engine garbage that's really meant to just trick you into buying their stupid version of the product. So most people I know who really want to drill down, and this is what I do, is you type in the question, pick, whatever you want. Like, what's the best movie for a kid to watch or something, and then just type Reddit at the end of it. Reddit, and so append that word to the end of it, and you'll start getting Reddit results. Reddit is just basically an internet forum, but you get, by and large, more authentic answers that you can sort through and you look through. It's helpful. But a lot of people use Reddit. It's one of the most popular platforms on planet Earth. Kamala Harris's campaign has been filling it with astroturfed garbage. Astroturfed, meaning fake support for Kamala. I'll share the details with you in just a moment on that, but there's quite a bit of interference going on. The Federalist today has a story about how Kamala Harris's campaign is manipulating Reddit and breaking the rules of that platform to control it. There's an organization from the Harris Walls campaign. They built basically a chat group on what's called a Discord server. They're all chatting amongst themselves in private. And a Federalist writer was able to get into it to see what they're up to. And all they're doing is disseminating talking points and then pretending like it's being organically posted to Reddit. So the politics, it's called a subreddit, is filled with all this pro-Kamala nonsense. So much so that the Federalist has identified that 1 out of every 8 of all top posts in that entire subreddit, politics, is actually being posted by the Kamala Harris campaign without any disclosure whatsoever. So in an environment where people are debating politics, Kamala Harris's campaign is once again leading with deception, which I expect a lot of tonight when she speaks at the Ellipse right here in the nation's capital. Guess who's not going to be there? Joe Biden. She's going to attack Trump as a threat to democracy while keeping the actual president of the United States as far away from her as possible. It's a great party they've got going on. May they lose like crazy next week. Stay with us. The great one, Mark Levin, up next.